You're listening to the I Do Crew podcast with Jen and Emma. This week we are talking all about seating plans and family politics. So I popped this question onto the Insta story asking for dilemmas or questions on seating plans and guest lists and all that jazz. We got lots of responses, Em. So there's lots to catch up on this week.
That doesn't surprise me because I think family politics is a big worry for people. And if you do have a lot of family politics, it does almost take over the whole planning. And a lot of that is about, where should I put that person who doesn't talk to that person and can't have that person sitting close to that person. I think it causes a lot of stress.
And I think sometimes the wedding becomes about the other people and not about the bride and groom.
Yeah. I'm all for saying that you need to make sure that your wedding is good for your guests and there's things for them to do and they feel comfortable. But when that swings the other way and you're starting to make decisions based on Auntie Pat and Auntie Maud, I think that's when it gets wrong.
Yeah, and I think I joined when I was getting married. I joined quite a lot of DIY Facebook groups, and the dilemmas and questions that people were putting on there, saying, "Oh, I don't know what to do. What have other brides done in this scenario?" Most of it was family drama or guest drama.
Yeah. It'd be great if you could just have a wedding and not invite anybody, wouldn't
Just me and my future husband.
it?
So should we get to it? There's a lot of questions, so we're going to
Let's go.
keep the questions anonymous on this because some of the people that got in touch said that they didn't want us to share their names. So we're just going to keep all of the questions and dilemmas that came in anonymous for this episode. So the first one that came in, and I think is quite a good place to start, is it was a question: do you have to have a seating plan?
I would say no. You don't have to have one. You don't have to do anything. And if you're having like a barbecue style dinner or a buffet style dinner, I don't think you really need one because people would grab a plate and go and sit where they want to sit. I do think there are a lot of advantages of having a seating plan though. And one of them is when you have a group of people, I think they they like it better when to be told where to go and what to do because you don't get the awkward thing of somebody milling around trying to find where they should be sitting and not feeling sure. So if you've got a designated seat, you know to go to table 2 and find your name. So I think it takes a little worry from the guests because they're just doing what they're told, and in a group of people that makes things go quicker because from activity to activity and with a big group of people there needs to be that bit of organization to get people sat down, so having a seating plan makes that quicker.
I also think from a control freak bride perspective, not having a seating plan and letting people sit wherever they want fills me with dread.
Yeah, yeah. But like I said, if you're just having a big barbecue and you're all sat outside and there's hay bales and picnic blankets, that type of vibe, I think it's fine. But if you are having a sit down dinner that's been catered for and you're going to be giving a plate of food, you do need a seating plan, even if it's just you're sat on this table and you don't actually assign a seat, but at least they know they're going to, I don't know, I've got my Disney jumper on today, they're going to the Snow White table, or just to give a bit of direction for that group of people. And also you can do clever things like make sure that the people doing the speeches are close by to save time for them getting from one end to the other, or the older people are closer to the loos, that type of thing. You can make it a bit more comfortable for people. And often venues and caterers, I think, will want one because they'll want to know who's vegetarian and where they're giving that nut-free option to.
I also based my seating plan on and also my table setup. So we had an option to have either trestle tables or round tables at our wedding. And the feedback that I received from anonymous listener A was that when they went to a wedding with trestle tables, and they are in the older generation category, they said it was a real pain to get out of the trestle table to go to the toilet because you have to walk down this massive long aisle of all these oh, could you just pull your chair it up? Excuse me. Oh, you've dropped your coat on the floor. Whereas round tables, just get up from your seat and go for a wee. It's fine.
Yeah. And also the trestle tables now tend to have benches, don't they? You've got like hoik your legs over. They look great, but if you are a bit older or you know, are disabled, that's just a nightmare. So I think you need to think about your seating arrangements with the type of guests that you've got.
And if you're sat with, let's say, 3 other people on a bench and you want to move the bench closer, but it just, it's not for me, I don't think.
But then we're not, you know, the young whippersnappers anymore, are we, Jen? I mean, if you've got, what's quite cute is having like a different, like you can make it look really cute with like a different. So there's a few round tables, there's a few trestle tables, and sort of mix it up, and then you just put all the young whippersnappers on the table, the trestle table with the bench right at the end. Still make it look really cool, but they've got the
Just,
fun of that, and Nana has not to worry too much.
just one thing for the podcast record is I'm still younger than you, Em. So
Way younger than me. Yeah.
way younger for the record. Thank you. Okay, so I think we're saying, do you have to have a seating plan? You don't have to. Depends on what kind of wedding and vibes you're going for. If you're having trestle tables, seating plan is probably for the best so that the older people can get to the toilet easier. One of the questions that came in was, what is the best way to do a seating plan? I made a paper plan and moved names around. Is there a better way? The first thing that comes to my mind is Monica's, pin flags, and Rachel moving herself to the bar, which I can sympathise with. So
Yeah.
what's the best way, Em? What did you do for your wedding?
I had a big A3 sheet of paper. I drew some round circles on it. And then I had, you know, them like really thin post-its, the little page marker post-its. And I just wrote everybody's name on it, and stuck them on, and then you can move them around. And then I think I had like a colour for Jordan's family, a colour for my family, and a colour for friends, so that I could easily see where everybody was and make sure that the family were closer to the top table. But yeah, I just did it the old-fashioned way with post-its and paper. How did you do it?
Well, that's a good idea for the colour coding because I don't think I would have thought about it that way. So I delegated my table plan because I found it very stressful. So my mum offered to do it and she did a similar thing. So she got a couple of big pieces of paper. She drew the tables in the order that they were going to be placed in the venue. I'd given her a few sort of pointers and saying these people need to sit together or we'd like these people to sit together. So I had grouped people and then she'd had a go and then we went through it together, moved a couple of people around because there are a few people that, because Ian and I didn't have a top table, we just had a round table closest to the bars ish in the middle of everybody else's tables. So it was choosing who was going to be on our tables, where our family was going to go, all of that kind of thing. I think if you've got the time to do a Monica seating plan with the flags, I think that's really cute. And I think, as you said, just keep it as draft
Yeah.
because you don't know, once you've got all of your RSVPs in, you're pretty sure that most of those people are going to come. But equally, I had cancellations the week of the wedding. And I remember as I was putting out the name places, the name cards, somebody else cancelled. Obviously, I was livid at the time.
Yeah. There are obviously I got married 7 years ago, so everything's changed quite a lot. But there are apps and stuff now that you can download, and as you people RSVP, you can put them in, and then you can note if they've got any dietary requirements. And then there's some that you can even like choose what shape table. So if you've got 5 round tables and a top table, or they're all trestle tables, or they're square tables, you note them all in, and it populates the room for you. and then you can flag them if they're a couple, and it will do it for you, and then you can just move the people around, and then it just prints off. You can download it and print it off and give it to your caterer, and you can. Good.
What?
I mean, I haven't actually used one, but I have looked at them, and I have like read all the feedback that's on the Apple app store,
That
and they seem to be working brilliant.
that is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm speechless at the technical trickery.
But I
Wow.
think I would still be that girl that gets the paper and her pens and her highlighters out, because for me, I didn't have too much to consider, really. It was quite an easy job because there wasn't really much family politics, sorry. So it was quite a nice evening, and so I didn't. But it's kind of thing where you might get a bridesmaid over, or your mum over, or just sit with your husband to be with a bottle of wine, and sort of, to me, it was a nice thing to do. Table with your post-its. But yeah, there's loads of technical amazing things now.
I don't think I could delegate the app to my mum. I think we'd probably still have to stick with paper and drawing to scale.
Thing for your mum to do. She sat there and she really thought about it, and then you got the first draft, and so it was easier for you then just to swap a few people over.
Yeah.
So yeah. So either get an app or get your mum to do it. That's what we're saying, is it?
That's the best way. Okay, we also had a question which is more to do with family politics. So what do you do if your parents or in-laws don't get on? What do you do with the top table?
Wow. This annoys me because everybody should just suck it up, really. But I think there's two things that you can do if family politics does exist and it's hard to get away from sometimes. So I think there's two things you can do. One, you can just tell people to behave themselves and get on with it. Or you could get away from all of that and just do a sweetheart table, which is a table that is just the two of you. And then nobody feels put out. Everybody's sat with who they want to sit with. You haven't got your stepmom feeling left out because she's not on the top table. I think a sweetheart table just cuts all of that out.
Have you been to a wedding where you've noticed the family politics?
Not at the wedding. I've been part of weddings where it's a big thing, and I can see the stress that it causes, because the couple don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable or sad or left out, or and so it adds a lot of stress. So they're doing everything that they can to put the barriers in place so nothing happens, or nobody kicks off, or nobody feels sad or left out.
And I think it's a lot to juggle. If you've got siblings who don't get on or parents that don't get on, and I think also even close relatives that have passed away, that all of those things become huge when you're doing your seating plan, because you want to, let's say you've got I don't know, one of your parents has passed away or grandparents and you're very close to them. There's ways that you can remember them, but whilst you're doing your seating plan, you're clearly not putting a seat for them. And I think even that is quite a traumatic, emotional experience to go through.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine, because you want them, you follow in the rules of the top table that you've Googled, and evidently there would be an empty seat, and so yeah, I can imagine that's really hard.
I remember at my wedding, my dad just mentioned his dad, which is our grandpa, Cyril. And I just looked at my sisters and my sister-in-law, they all burst into tears just at mentioning his name. And we didn't have a memory table or photographs or anything like that. So
You did have Cyril's drawers though.
yes, Cyril's drawers,
So for
which
anybody that doesn't know, Cyril's drawers are something that our styling company has in our huge warehouse of things, and they are an old set of mahogany desk drawers. And so a lot of people, we style a lot of them on card tables, and you can half open them and people can put their cards in. So he's everywhere, isn't he?
he's everywhere. We don't tend to do a wedding without him.
No, there hasn't been many weddings that we've done without Cyril's drawers, are there? Bless him.
Just popping my phone on do not disturb. Now I can't get back
There's
to him.
technical prowess of our podcast.
And I'm back. Ebony podcast experts. Next question.
Yes.
We can only have 80 guests and our list is currently over 100. Help! Exclamation mark.
This is tricky. I'm assuming that this is before people have been invited, because I would probably err on the side of caution of it actually inviting more people than your venue takes, with the hope that some people are going to decline, because not many people do, especially if it's a wedding that's fairly local, and not many people do. So I wouldn't edge your bets and say, oh, we'll invite 100 hoping that 20 people won't come, because it's likely not to work out like that for you. So I would go.
I think that's a great idea. I'm the opposite, because people were cancelling for my wedding extravaganza the week of the wedding. And not that it mattered to the people that I invited at short notice, but if I had just oversubscribed the wedding, let's call it, oversubscribed by 15 people, thinking that 15 people roughly would drop out, then I would have invited everybody, knowing that they weren't 3 to 4 weeks prior to the wedding invitation. Because you know, if you're getting that invitation, that you're on the, C list, because you haven't received a wedding invitation 6 to 9 months prior, or an evening guest invitation. So you know you're on C list. I mean, never turn down a wedding invitation because I love a good wedding. But equally, I should have oversubscribed and hope for the best.
Yeah, that makes me feel very uncomfortable. I am the opposite. Invite the amount of people, and then because I would rank them. So like number ones are people that have to be there, so you're really close family. Number two are people that you really want to be there, which are really close friends. And then number three people are, wider friendship groups, people that you feel obliged to invite. And then you go through ones and twos and invite them, and then some of threes. And if you do it far enough in advance, when them declines come in, you can then send out invitations to the threes without them feeling like a 4-week invitation. But you do have to send your invites out a year in advance for that to work. But that's the way I would do it.
Yeah, that sounds better than my oversubscribing.
I mean, it could work, but you just don't know.
Risky.
And then you're on the phone 2 weeks before. You know that invitation that I sent you? Really sorry, can't come. We thought you'd decline. Sorry.
I also, when I was going through the process of pulling together the guest list, in my mind, because I knew that I was paying for everything, would I take this person out for dinner and would I pay? If the answer was no, they're not on the guest list.
That's a really good thing.
Because, again, a Friends reference, I think it's because I've been starting it again from season 1, but Monica and Chandler's wedding, he says the night before that he's paying for dinner for 150 people tomorrow. And I think, yes, you are.
Yeah.
Would you buy them dinner in your normal life, away from your wedding? If the answer's no, do not put them on that list.
No. And I think there's that thing, isn't there, where people feel, so your mum's come to you and say, oh, don't forget to invite Auntie Maud's neighbour because you were always playing in her garden when you were 4, type conversations. And I think in that situation, unless you really want Auntie Maud's neighbour to be there, then you just need to have that conversation with whoever's pressuring you to invite them. Just say, we really can't. We haven't got enough seats. But how about we do something else together, and I go around Auntie Maud and invite her over when we're writing the addresses on the envelopes, so she feels a bit involved. She can come to the evening. But I just think, I do think you need to tread carefully, and I do think you need to do it sensitively, but it is your wedding and you don't need to invite who you don't want to be there.
No, I didn't have any Auntie Mauds at my wedding. And any suggestions were graciously refused from anyone else. Oh, can so and so come?
No.
No. Okay, next question. We've touched on it a little bit. But I love the idea of a sweetheart table. But do you think we would be lonely during dinner? My answer would be no. Enjoy the peace and quiet. Em, what do you think?
I think I personally love them. It's like a bit of private time for you to have your first dinner together as a couple. And actually, if you have a traditional top table with 6 people, 8 people on it, you can't really talk to them anyway because you're in a big long line. So you can only really talk to the people that are either side of you, and one of them is your groom or your bride. So it doesn't actually make that much difference. And I think they're really cute to style. They're really good if you've got an odd shaped room, or it's a slightly weird, there's a weird little balcony or a little alcove or something. They're really easy. They're easier to style because you don't need as much room. It often means you can get an extra round table in, so you can have more guests. And you could do a cute little backdrop. I think they're great. Stops the family politics. If you've got step parents or multiple maid of honors or multiple groomsmen or whatever you've got going on, you can just put them all on tables, sit them with their partners so their partners aren't feeling lonely. Because it's often, if you've got a bridesmaid and they've got a husband or a boyfriend and they're sat on a table and they don't really know anyone, they're the ones that are feeling lonely. So it stops all of that. I think they're the way to go.
I think I've also noticed when we've been styling weddings this year through our wedding styling and prop hire company, Like and Lights, follow us on Instagram. I've noticed that people are doing sweetheart tables more this year than they were last year. And I don't know why, but for me, I always thought, oh, small wedding, the couple will probably sit together, you'll have fewer tables, but sweetheart table at a small wedding would be quite nice. But I think you're right. I don't think it matters what size your wedding is, how many guests you've got. I actually think it's quite a nice way to catch up with your husband because you don't really spend that much time together on the day unless you're having your pictures taken or unless you're doing your vows. The rest of the time is you being pulled in so many different directions, either questions from the venue, questions from your suppliers, questions from your guests, and just people that haven't maybe not seen you for a while. So I think having that, the first word that comes to mind is respite,
Yeah.
um, from your wedding on that table so you can actually eat your food.
Yes. 100%. And actually, it's quite common in sort of Indian weddings and things like that, and they actually put them on a little stage with a little canopy, and they're separated, and they're sort of, I don't want to say this to scare people, they're a bit of a spectacle. So people are eating their dinner and they can glance over, and they're the special people of the day, rather than having a massive long line of table. I would 100% do it. I didn't. I had a top table, but I would 100% do a sweetheart table.
Did you have a long top table or did you have a round top table?
It was long. Yeah.
Were you chatting to Jordan or were you just...
No, I wasn't even sat there.
Oh, that's right.
My dinner consisted of me lying outside with my head in my photographer's lap, just having a bit of a break. My dress was a little bit tight, so we did this. And then I came back for speeches.
Was Jordan just sat there with an empty chair next to him?
Yep. Yeah. I was like, you stay here. I'm just going to get some air.
How long were you gone exactly? Because were people not like, oh, is Emma okay? Or where is she?
In my head, it was a good hour, but in reality, I think it was like 20 minutes. I remember the main course being served, me going to have a little bite of the roast potato and thinking, oh, hang on a minute, I just need to go and get some air, and then coming back and everybody was starting to finishing them. I wasn't gone hours, but in my head I was like, missed the whole of dinner, when really I just missed the main meal. Stupid.
That's cute. Okay, next question. A couple of members of family refuse to sit on the same table. What should I do?
It's just annoying. I didn't really experience what's the word? Experience. I don't really know, because I would just be like, just get on with it, sit there. I know that doesn't work. What's your advice, Jen?
I don't think anybody said to me, oh, I'm not sitting with so and so. I just knew not to sit people together because I wanted them to have a good time. I didn't want them to, oh God, I'm sat next to Vladimir again.
Yeah.
I just didn't want that. And I didn't want to be worrying about it either. I didn't want to be worrying, oh my God, so-and-so sat next to so-and-so. They're going to be fuming about it when they see the table plan. Then what if everyone starts moving their place here? I just didn't want to be worrying about any of that. So I made sure that people were sat with people that they knew.
Yeah.
Or if they weren't, they were sat with people of a similar age or similar background. I remember that a couple of one of my friends that I went to uni with, and then somebody that I used to work with like 10 years ago, and somebody that I know through our day jobs. I put them on a table together with, again, somebody I used to work with, because I all knew them roughly at the similar time, or they had similar backgrounds, so military backgrounds. So I knew that there's something to chat about.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. Then I put all of the sort of party animal older people together. Well, not older people, but I'm not even going to mention their names in case they complain.
Well,
No, you were on the rowdy drinkers table with my young friends, and then I had my older friendship group on a different table. Then Ian's friends that I'd never met before on another table, and then family tables. Nobody said that they were unhappy.
I think most people do just get on with it, and actually the thought process of this cousin and this cousin not getting on is normally worse than actually what plays out on the day, and people do just get on with it. I would say, if you've got enough tables, splitting the people up, not often a huge issue. If you've got lots of things going on, then you potentially, rather than having lots of round tables where you have to like think about where they're sat on that round table to make sure they're not back to back with so and so. Maybe just have 3 big banqueting tables, and then it's easier to place people that aren't close to each other because they just go down the line. So there are things you can do, but I would say it's mostly worse in your head.
And I also think if these people are bringing that to you whilst you're trying to plan your wedding, should they even be coming? Would they buy you dinner? Because if the answer's no, take them off the list as well.
Yeah. So we've got 2 takeouts really, haven't we? If you wouldn't buy them dinner, don't put them on. And if they wouldn't buy you dinner, don't put them on.
No, goodbye forever. Okay, next question. What's the rule about inviting children?
I would say it's a totally personal choice, and you definitely have the option to state no children on your invite. Um, you just need to bear in mind that if you do that, you might get some people that aren't able to come because of their circumstances. And I think if you're happy with that, then go for it. I would say that you then need to be careful about how many children are actually at the wedding. So if you're saying no children, but you've got a really close little sister or a niece or your own children, you just need to be careful about how many children are actually there. Because it is a little bit of a kick in the teeth if you've been said that you can't bring your baby and you've found somebody to look after them and you've worked hard to get yourselves there without your baby, and then there's 10 kids running around. It's a little bit, ooh, would one of mine actually have made much of a difference? That's just something to be aware of. It's not the end of it. And then I always said, if you do invite children, you need to entertain them. And I don't mean just like a colouring book at dinner. If you've got 20 children, you need to think of activities that they can do. You can get really cute things now. There's like companies that will come and set up like a little creche area, which is like a soft play or big white bouncy castle. You need to get their energy out so that they're better behaved, and also watch the amount of sugar you're giving them. It's a really cool thing to give them a big bag of sweets or have all like their own little cupcake, but you're just fueling them children with sugar, which then makes them hyper, which then makes them harder to look after for their parents, so their parents have less of a nice time.
Also, if you don't have kids, I mean, I didn't do sweets on the table. We didn't invite kids to our wedding. We only had I think there ended up being 3 in the end, but 2 of them were my nephews, which we see every weekend. So very, very close family. Children came to our wedding, but I put like tractor and digger activity books on their table. But you do see a lot of the time sugar, like jars of sweets and sugar, and as their sort of activities. And until you just said that, I know I didn't do it at my wedding, but I would never have thought
No,
that they're going to get hyped up on sugar, start acting like lunatics while the father of the bride is doing his speech and everyone's emotional and the kids are crazy in the background.
yeah. And actually, if you're not a parent, you would think giving them a jar of sweets and a cupcake and not thinking about having a bouncy castle for them to run that off, you wouldn't think about it. But as a parent of a 3-year-old, my worst nightmare would be going to a wedding with him where there's nothing for him to do, and I've got to, especially if it's in like a nice hotel, where I've got to actually watch that he's not just running around on a field, got to keep him contained in a seat, and you've just given him, you know, all the sugar in the world, and you've just given it to him 20 minutes before you're about to do your speeches. So it's just like thinking about things like that. Get
I
about
would,
or don't give them sweets.
yeah, I would never have thought about it. And I've never thought about it as a guest at any wedding. If I've been sat on a table with kids or seen that the kids have got sweets, I never have I ever thought, well, we're in for a noisy 25 minutes between now and the speeches.
Yeah, because it goes quiet and they're like, oh.
Yeah.
And they're excited because they're getting a lot of attention as well. So they're already amped up, and you're asking them to sit in the seat quietly for what could be an hour and a half dinner. It's a lot. It's a lot. And it's a lot for the parents to manage too.
Also quite stressful, I can imagine.
Yeah, I've not been to a wedding. Only, well, actually we have, but it was Jordan's brother's wedding. And there was lots of kids, so they all sort of just entertain themselves. And Justin is really good at thinking about things for them to do. So there was lots of, there wasn't a bouncy castle or anything, but there was lots of little things that they could go and get into mischief a little bit with by being safe. So that wasn't too bad. But yeah, don't give them sugar. Get a bouncy castle or a soft play or riding a donkey or something, something.
I also think it's mad that when a couple who aren't really kid friendly invite kids to their wedding and then they complain about the children. You know, the mild.
The ceremony is the hardest part.
That's what I mean. The noisy tutting from the people who aren't kid friendly with the children that are screaming, laughing, shouting,
They're
just
just in a big bucket of confetti, and you're trying to keep them away from.
yeah. And then the couple are annoyed at the fact that these children are making noises during the ceremony. Uh, you invited them, hun. They're here because you invited them.
Yeah.
Just saying.
And the poor that's got the newborn baby that starts crying because it's gone all quiet, and they don't like that change of atmosphere. And she's panicking, trying to go out, trying to not be rude by not being. Just
I don't think I'd go. If I had a newborn baby or a child underneath the age of 5, it would be a flat out, can't come, sorry.
I'm finding it's as a parent though, not feeling obliged to bring your children is quite nice if you can find childcare, because you can really then just enjoy the day. And if it's you with your partner, it's a nice day for you to be together too, because you can remember your own wedding, and you don't have to be running around in your heels trying to get their head out the flower bed. And so I would probably, even if Arthur was invited to a wedding, I'd probably just say he's not coming. But then I have the option to find childcare, and not everybody does.
Mm.
Does that answer the
Tough.
question, do you reckon?
Don't really know what the answer is.
It's a personal choice.
And I think if you don't mind the kids being there, and if you don't mind being around kids, and you know that kids are going to be kids, if you're absolutely fine with all of those things, why not? But if you want your wedding to be this perfect version that you see on movies where all the children are silent and they are just beautiful flower girls or page boys, or they're just sat quietly in the church, that's not going to happen.
No, your,
So
your flower girl is going to walk down the aisle looking pretty with her little ringlets and her flowers in her hair and her little basket, and 10 minutes later she's going to have grass stains, and her flower crown is going to be on mum's head. It's not going to stay pristine.
at my sister's wedding, she had 3 flower girls. She wanted a big church wedding, so flower girls were a must. And because I was the maid of honor, I was walking directly behind them. And probably 1 minute before the vicar started, the teeniest flower girl spilt all the flowers on the floor.
Exactly.
So we're there scraping it up. I got the bigger flower girls to help me scrape it, scoop it back into the little basket. Just thought, why is this my life? But it all worked out in the end.
Yeah.
And before they stepped off that little step down the aisle, I was like, smile, smile.
You just
They didn't, but
you can't predict children. You can normally predict adult behavior, until they've had a few drinks, and then normally people don't mind too much, but you can't predict children's behaviour. So if you want it to go completely smoothly without chocolate stains and spilt flowers, then don't invite children. If you're quite happy with a bit of chaos, the more the merrier, because they do bring a lightness to the day, and they do. If there's an awkward moment between a group of people who don't really know each other, and there's a child digging a hole in the lawn, you've got something to put your attention onto and say, "Oh, look at that." So they do bring entertainment and a lightness to the day.
And some of my favourite pictures and clips from our wedding video is of my oldest nephew during our first dance, and he'd basically taken a few props from the photo booth. So he was wearing a captain's hat, like a boat captain's hat, with this giant inflatable microphone, and just sort of singing his way through the dance floor during mine and Ian's first dance. And it is honestly some of the cutest content that was captured
Yeah,
that wouldn't have been there if he wasn't there.
exactly.
Super cute. That's it, Em.
That was a good one. I liked that one.
Seating plans and family politics done. Tick that box.
Sorted. Don't know what I'm
Amazing.
worried about.
If you've enjoyed this podcast and if you'd like to keep up to date with all things the I Do Crew podcast, please follow our Instagram account. It's at the I Do Crew podcast. Send us your dilemmas or questions and we will try to help you answer them. Not always the right answers, but we will try. Next week, we're talking wedding traditions and superstitions. But for now, it's bye from me.
And bye from me.
You've been listening to the I Do Crew podcast with Jen and Emma. Keep up to date with our podcast news by following our I Do Crew podcast Instagram account. Thanks for listening.